1995 saw many changes in the world of music. The aggressive sound of grunge was on a gradual decline. America's youth wasn't as angry as it used to be. Thanks to artists like Smashing Pumpkins, Green Day, and Alanis Morissette, the loud and racy voice of rock did not go quietly. It was probably because the youth of America was discovering new technological marvels such as the internet, and that came with chat rooms, instant messaging, and the early stages of music and video downloading. The American economy, thanks to the Clinton administration, was giving the country some of its more prosperous years. Dream Theater was breaking ground and making a name for themselves, and they saw changes at every turn. Atco Records, who had originally signed them, had changed their name to East West Records around the release of Awake. After change of seasons and a small break, more changes would come about. East West had gone through a changing of the guard, and along with that went Dream Theater's contract. With a new team at the company who was unaccustomed to the relationship of Dream Theater, while there are some that would make a deal with the devil in order to boost likability, this was not one of those things that this progressive band was happy with. Still, the pros did outweigh the cons. While their tours and past albums did give them success, the opportunity to become bigger and better was imminent. 1997 saw Dream Theater heading back into the studio to record their next album. Feeling the pressure to adopt a more mainstream sound, East West recruited writer-producer Desmond Child to work with guitarist Petrucci on the band's new single, You or Me, which turned into the song You Not Me, with a shift towards less complexity and more radio-friendly sound and pace. This was not something Dream Theater was used to, and the aftermath of this process ended up being almost 2 CDs worth of material, including a 20-minute long follow-up to one of their fan-favorite songs, Metropolis Part 1, The Miracle and the Sleeper. Of course, the band would be blocked by the executives of East West, not allowing a double album release. They felt that it would not be received well by the general public. Lead vocalist James LaBrie agreed with the executives, and all unused songs were later released in a Yet to Jam Records demo release. The songs that remained became the 1997 album Falling Into Infinity. Not really showing much care towards acceptance by the general public, Dream Theater watched in horror as their loyal fans showed negativity towards the album. While the album was moderately progressive sounding, tracks such as Hollow Years and You Not Me prompted some to believe that this was the dawn of a new mainstream Dream Theater. What most did not know was that these lyrics contained some of the darkest emotions the band members were feeling during the recording sessions. Lyrics that were composed by drummer Portnoy were inspired by his frustration with Elektra Records. New Millennium and Just Let Me Breathe are aimed at the music industry. John Petrucci wrote 6 lyrics for the album, including those for Peruvian Skies, which dealt with the subject of child abuse. Falling Into Infinity appeared at number 52 on the Billboard Top 200. Fan reception to the album was horrific, and with some going so far as to accuse Dream Theater of selling out. Critical reception to the album was also lackluster, and was referred to the band's weakest efforts since their debut. Falling Into Infinity took a major toll on Dream Theater. It wasn't until 2004 where Mike Portnoy admitted to wanting to break up the band altogether just to escape this madness. Music continued to change through 1999. The mainstream was now consisting of boy bands and pop princesses. Some of the biggest names in heavy metal had either gone through major lineup changes like Iron Maiden, or changed their sound altogether like Metallica. MTV had also gone in a different direction. The channel that once brought music videos to the masses was no longer airing them. If you wanted one, you would have to watch Carson Daly and Total Request live and suffer through screaming fans shouting out to their BFFs. Dream Theater went through a change as well, seeing the departure of their second keyboardist, Derek Sherinian. They would soon acquire Jordan Rudess, a musician they had tried to bring on board when Kevin Moore had departed. This was the first of many changes, and more would follow on Dream Theater's terms. Take away my pain. In late 1997, another break was needed for Dream Theater, specifically Mike Portnoy. Along with newly acquired keyboardist Jordan Rudess, both Portnoy and Petrucci would form the Liquid Tension Experiment. a progressive instrumental supergroup with Tony Levin on bass. Using this to court Rudess, the band would go back into the studio with an ultimatum from Portnoy. The band demanded to Elektra Records to allow them to write, record, and produce the songs that they wanted after the failure of Falling into Infinity. The result? The band was given complete creative control. Their first project was one that they wanted to do since their first major success, and that was to create a follow-up to Metropolis Part 1. Starting with the original 20-minute song that did not make the last record, they turned it into a complete concept album with a story revolving around the themes such as reincarnation, murder, and betrayal. In 1999, Metropolis Part 2, Scenes from a Memory, was released. While the album only reached 73 on the US charts, it was given high critical acclaim, being called the band's masterpiece. Following this album was their largest world tour to date, and it took over a year to complete. Much like the booklet that came with the album, the concerts reflected a theatrical theme, the first half of each show comprising the entire Scenes from a Memory album, accompanied by a film showing dramatized portions of the story projected onto a video screen behind the stage. For the last date of their North American tour, in the Roseland Ballroom in New York City, actors were hired to play the characters in the story, and a gospel choir was enlisted to perform in some sections of the performance. This album would also carry Dream Theater into other areas of cult media. One of the biggest phenomenons in American television was the Akira Toriyama export Dragon Ball Z. In March of 2000, the English-dubbed version of the Dragon Ball Z film, The History of Trunks, included songs from Scenes of a Memory. The concert itself would be filmed and eventually released in early 2001 as the band's very first DVD release, Metropolis 2000. Scenes from New York. While the DVD would not feature the entire show, the band would soon release the full show on the CD, Live Scenes from New York. The original cover depicted one of Dream Theater's early logos, modified to show an apple, as in the Big Apple, and the New York skyline including the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in flame above it. In an unfortunate coincidence, the album was released on the same date as the September 11th attacks. The album was quickly recalled and re-released with revised artwork. The few copies which were sold with the original artwork have since become rare collector's items. The DVD would go on to be certified gold in 2002. It seemed that the path was finally lighting up for Dream Theater, receiving praise from their growing fan base once again. The best thing to do now was embrace their redemption and give their fans something new. Dream Theater had longed to do a double album, and in 2002 they got their chance. 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence would end up being one of the most original and deepest projects of the band. As always, each member of the band would have something to contribute. James Labrie would write Blind Faith, which talked about questions of organized religion. Mike Portnoy and John Petrucci co-wrote a song about stem cell research in The Great Debate. The big song, however, was The Glass Prison, which was about the 12 steps of rehabilitation from alcoholism. The song was composed of 3 parts mirroring the first 3 steps. Furthermore, it begins with the static that ended Scenes from a Memory. With 5 songs total on the first disc, the second disc would include a self-titled track, one song composed of 6. To this day, it is the longest song Dream Theater has recorded. The song tells of 6 people suffering from various syndromes. When recording it, Dream Theater wanted to keep the song at 20 minutes, but more and more ideas kept coming, which resulted in the epic reaching a whopping 42 minutes. 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence was very well received by critics and the press. It was the most publicized Dream Theater album since Awake, debuting on the Billboard charts at number 46, and now, with the mainstream use of the internet, the Billboard Internet charts put the album up at number 1. The concert tour would also give the fans a real treat, as a special 4-disc set called the Dream Theater Bootlegs would be released. Each album would feature Dream Theater covering an entire influential album. They were Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd, Number of the Beast by Iron Maiden, Made in Japan by Deep Purple, and Master of Puppets by Metallica. Fans craved more after back-to-back success, and Dream Theater aimed to please. Music needed a saving grace amongst the mainstream, as rock fanatics and metalheads were seeing a sharp decline and a near death of rock. The music industry was in a war of its own, and many had a lot to say. Dream Theater was ready to take a stand as well, and it kept their fans on the edge after the last chord of 6 Degrees was played. It was unfinished, and the fans were left with a burning question. What direction was Dream Theater taking, and how were they going to say their piece?
And steadily he would decline into his